Vincent Hale was the last man anyone expected to slip away from his own celebration. Inside, a charity gala sparkled with crystal glasses and polite applause for the award he'd just accepted. Outside, he found a girl, no more than 8, sitting alone at the edge of a fountain, clutching a plastic crown like it was worth more than gold. "You're late," she told him without looking up. She wasn't waiting for him. She was waiting for a father who hadn't come. And in that moment, Vincent realized he might be exactly who she needed instead. The charity gala was in full swing when Vincent Hale stepped out onto the patio to escape the noise. Inside, a string quartet played beside champagne towers and velvet ropes. Outside, the air was cooler, still. His phone buzzed in his pocket with a dozen unopened texts, congratulatory messages about the award he'd just accepted, offers for interviews, subtle nudges from investors who wanted to ride the next wave of whatever he touched. He ignored them all. He wasn't in the mood to celebrate. Not really. The plaque in his hand felt heavy in the wrong way, the kind of weight that came with pretending. He tucked it under his arm, loosened his tie, and turned toward the garden stairs, just far enough from the noise, just close enough to disappear if he needed to. That was when he saw her. A girl, maybe 7, maybe 8, sitting at the edge of the fountain with her knees pulled to her chest and a plastic crown gripped in her hands like it meant everything. She wore a dress too big for her, the hem dusted in gravel, and sneakers with one lace undone. She wasn't crying, just waiting. Vincent slowed. "Hey there," he said, cautious. "You okay?" She didn't look up, just rotated the crown slowly between her fingers. "You're late." His brow furrowed. "I think you might be waiting for someone else." She finally looked up. Her eyes were serious. "I thought he'd show up." "Who?" "My dad." Vincent's chest tightened. "I waited all night," she added. "He said maybe, but I wore the crown just in case." Vincent knelt down, slow and steady, the gravel biting into his knee. "Is your mom inside?" "She's working," the girl said. "She said I could stay out here as long as I didn't get in the way." "Can I sit with you?" She nodded once, quietly. Vincent lowered himself onto the fountain's edge, still holding the plaque under one arm. He watched as she turned the crown over again. "It's from the party store," she said. "Not real, but it's all I had." "It looks just right on you." She didn't answer. He cleared his throat. "What's your name?" "Anna." He offered his hand. "Vincent." She shook it, solemn and small. "Is your dad, does he work a lot?" She nodded. "But I thought maybe he'd surprise me." Vincent glanced back toward the glowing windows of the ballroom, the sound of laughter muffled by glass. "How long have you been out here?" "A while." "And if he doesn't come?" She looked down at the crown again. "Then I guess I stop waiting." There was no bitterness in her voice, just resignation. The kind kids learn too early from promises never kept and rooms where adults forget they're listening. Vincent let out a breath. "Can I ask you something?" She nodded. "Would you let me stay here with you, just for a bit?" Anna tilted her head. "Why?" "Because I know what it feels like to wait for someone who doesn't show up, and I think it's easier if you don't have to do it alone." She didn't speak, but after a minute she slid half an inch closer and placed the crown carefully between them. He stayed. For a long time. And somewhere in that silence, something in him shifted. They sat like that for a while. 2 figures in the glow of the garden lights, the crown between them like some delicate thing neither of them dared to claim. Vincent didn't look at his phone. He didn't glance back at the party where his name was still probably echoing in toasts or handshakes. He just sat beside the girl who had waited, who was still waiting, who'd dressed for someone who didn't come. Anna didn't say much, but she didn't move away either. That was enough for him. Eventually he asked, "Do you come to these things a lot?" "My mom works for the event company," she said. "She's the one who makes the room pretty. I help sometimes. Not the big stuff, just the candles and chairs." "You did a great job." She nodded, still not smiling. "I've been to a lot of these," he added, "but I don't think anyone's ever made me feel like I was in the right place until now." Anna looked at him sideways. "You talk fancy." Vincent laughed quietly. "Yeah, That happens when you get old and go to too many meetings. Do you have a daughter? He hesitated. No, I don't. Anna looked down again, fiddling with the end of her sleeve. Then why are you being nice? The question pierced deeper than he expected. He didn't have an answer that made sense, not one that would explain why he hadn't walked away like every other stranger. Why he was still here, a millionaire CEO in polished shoes, sitting in the dirt beside a girl with a plastic crown. I think, he said carefully, because someone should have shown up for me when I was your age, and no one did. Anna was quiet again, but her shoulder ever so slightly leaned toward his. The crown glinted under the patio lights, cheap, light, molded plastic, but it might as well have been gold. Would it be okay, Vincent said after a moment, if I stay until your mom finishes? Anna gave the smallest nod. I can't promise to be as good as a dad, he added, but I could be a very good temporary stand-in. You don't have to be perfect, she said. You just have to stay. That made something in his chest pull tight. He reached for the crown, held it gently between his hands. May I? He asked. She nodded. He set the crown on her head, careful not to catch her curls. It tilted slightly, but she didn't adjust it. You look royal, he said. Anna gave him a small smile, not big, not dramatic, but real. Then she whispered, Thanks for coming, even if you weren't the one I waited for. Vincent replied, just as soft, Maybe I was. And for the first time in a long time, he didn't feel like the man who always showed up late to the things that mattered. He felt exactly where he was meant to be. A light flicked on inside the building, soft and golden, spilling out through the tall windows of the ballroom. Music still played, but it was muffled now, fading behind the moment. Anna glanced at it, then back at Vincent, and he could tell she was calculating how long she had until her mother would come looking, until this little bubble of quiet would break. She looked up at him, crown still slightly askew. Do you think people know when they've been left behind? He didn't answer right away. I think sometimes they do, and sometimes they only realize it much later. Anna nodded. I didn't want to. Realize it, I mean, that he wasn't coming. Vincent watched her, feeling something heavy settle inside him. Not pity, not guilt. Recognition. She was saying the words he hadn't known how to say when he was 8 or 10 or even 30. He hadn't worn a plastic crown, but he had waited. He knew what it felt like to hope hard enough that the absence might reverse itself. Anna looked down at her sneakers, then whispered, I think next time I won't wear the crown. He leaned in. I think you should always wear the crown. Why? Because someone will show up, someone who sees it, and they'll know what it means. She was quiet for a moment, then reached over and touched the edge of the plaque still tucked beneath his arm. What's that? He'd almost forgotten it was there. He set it down on the ledge beside them. It's an award. For what? For leadership, innovation, something like that. Anna tilted her head. Did it feel good to win it? He hesitated. It should have. But it didn't. Not really. Why? He looked down at her. Because I think it's the first time I realized I've been showing up to the wrong rooms. She didn't say anything, just leaned back on her hands and looked up at the stars poking through the city haze. Well, she said after a while, this room's better. He smiled. Yeah, it is. From the far end of the patio, a door opened. A woman stepped out, mid-30s, dark dress, headset around her neck, worry in her eyes. Anna, she called. Anna stood. Over here, Mom. Her mother spotted them and exhaled audibly. You scared me. I thought you wandered off. No, I stayed right here. She walked over and gave Vincent a cautious smile. I hope she wasn't bothering you. She wasn't, Vincent said, standing. We had a good talk. Anna's mother looked at her daughter, then at the crown, then at Vincent's loosened tie and knees, slightly dusted with gravel. Thank you, she said. Not everyone would have taken the time. Vincent looked down at Anna, who was now holding Bear, not the actual bear, but a tiny plush she'd tucked under her dress earlier. It wore a little cape. He hadn't even noticed it until now. Sometimes time is the most important thing you can give, he said. Anna turned to him, her voice quiet. If you're ever in another wrong room, just come find me. I will. She started to walk away, then turned back. Oh, and next time, you don't have to wear a crown, but you should bring one just in case. He smiled. Deal! And with that, she disappeared into the soft light with her mother, the crown still balanced on her head, and Bear tucked safely under her arm. Vincent stayed by the fountain for a long time after they were gone, not waiting, just remembering what it felt like to finally show up. The following Monday, Vincent sat in his corner office on the top floor of Hale Industries, the skyline stretching wide behind him like an empire he'd built without ever asking if he wanted it. His award sat on the shelf behind him, barely catching the light. He hadn't looked at it since the gala, not once. What he did look at, though, was the small drawing now pinned to the edge of his monitor, done in crayon, on the back of a seating chart that had been folded neatly into thirds. It showed two people sitting beside a fountain, one small, with a plastic crown, and a bear with a cape in her lap. The other, tall in a suit, holding something square under one arm. A speech bubble floated above the girl. I thought he'd show up. And the man was replying, I did. No signature, just a little star in the corner. He didn't need a name. He knew who had drawn it. He found himself staring at it between meetings in moments of silence. When people asked about numbers, forecasts, projections, none of it felt quite as urgent anymore. That afternoon he called his assistant. There's a woman, Emerson, I believe, who works for an event company that contracts with the Fairmont. I need you to find her. His assistant raised an eyebrow. Would you like to invite her to something? No, he said. I'd like to offer her a full-time position, benefits, and a more flexible schedule. Is she a planner? She's the kind of person who makes other people's lives easier, and I think it's time someone did the same for her. Understood. He hung up and sat back in his chair, staring at the crown in the drawing. The tilted plastic shape he now couldn't stop thinking about, the way it hadn't broken under the weight of waiting. Later that week he visited the hotel again, not for an event, not for a meeting, just to stand by the fountain. He didn't see Anna. He didn't expect to. But he took something from his coat pocket, a small box wrapped in gold paper, and placed it gently on the edge of the stone. Inside was a new crown, still plastic, but shinier, stronger. A note tucked inside. Next time, don't wait alone. I'm already on my way. He didn't sign that either. He just walked back to the car, slower this time, like he was learning how to arrive differently, because some people spend their lives entering every room with applause and never realize they've missed the ones that actually matter. And others find themselves beside a fountain, a girl, and a crown, and realize they've finally come home. A few days later, he got the call. It came from a number he didn't recognize, one he normally wouldn't answer. But something in him, intuition, hope, something quieter, made him swipe the screen. Hello? There was a pause. Then, in a voice so familiar, it pulled something straight out of his chest, Anna said, You left a crown. He smiled, leaning back in his chair, the city stretching behind him. I did. I found it this morning, she said. Mom said we could go early, and I just went to check. Did it fit? Yes, she said softly, but Bear says it's technically too shiny. Well, Vincent replied, tell Bear he deserves shiny. Anna didn't say anything for a moment, and when she did, her voice was smaller than he'd heard it before. I didn't think you'd leave something. I didn't think you'd still be looking. I don't stop looking for people who say yes, she whispered. He closed his eyes. I'm still saying it. You want to come to my school? She asked suddenly, the words fast, as if they'd been waiting at the edge of her mouth. They're having this thing, like a grown-ups you trust day, and if you want. Vincent's throat tightened. He swallowed. I'd be honored. You don't have to wear a suit, she added, or be fancy. I'll dress exactly like Bear, she giggled. Deal. When they hung up, he sat with the phone in his hand for a long time, the smile still soft on his face. Then he turned in his chair and pulled open the drawer where he'd kept the drawing she gave him, the crayon one. The story she'd drawn without knowing it would rewrite his own. He framed it that night, hung it above the shelf where his award used to be, because that moment, the one with the crown, and the waiting, and the quiet little voice that believed in people anyway, was the real achievement. Not the merger, not the headlines, not the empire, just a child who waited and a man who finally showed up. The day of the school event arrived with a sky so clear it looked like a painting. Vincent stood in front of his closet for the better part of 10 minutes, staring at his usual rotation of tailored suits and pressed shirts before finally pulling on a soft gray sweater and a pair of jeans that still had a dry cleaning tag on them. He looked in the mirror, ran a hand through his hair, and gave himself a quiet nod. It wasn't about looking important today. It was about being present. When he arrived at the school, he had to check in at the front office. The secretary smiled politely when she read his name on the sign-in sheet. "Vincent Hale?" she asked, eyes flicking up to meet his. "As in the Vincent Hale?" He smiled. "I'm here for Anna." She smiled again, softer this time. "She's been telling everyone you'd come." He was led through the halls by a student volunteer who looked about 12 and seemed torn between treating him like royalty and trying not to care. The hallway walls were lined with artwork, science posters, and construction paper crowns. Vincent slowed when he saw one drawing that made him stop in his tracks. A crayon version of the fountain, a tiny figure in a dress, a man beside her holding something square, and a caption written in careful block letters at the bottom. "I thought he'd show up. He did." He didn't need to check the name in the corner. He already knew it was hers. The classroom was already buzzing with noise when he walked in. Parents, grandparents, older siblings crammed into tiny chairs, listening to kids introduce their guests. And then he saw her, Anna, wearing a headband with sparkly stars, a dress with a small patch sewn onto the sleeve, and the crown he had left. It sat gently on her head like it had always belonged there. She saw him and lit up like the sun. She waved, fast and small. "He's here," she whispered to her teacher, who turned to smile at him, too. When it was her turn, Anna stood in front of the class holding a piece of paper. "This is my person," she said simply. "He didn't know he was mine, but I did." A few kids giggled. One adult sniffled. Anna kept going. Sometimes the people you wait for don't come, and sometimes someone else shows up instead, and sometimes, if you're really lucky, that person is better than the one you were hoping for. She turned to look at him, not shy, not uncertain, just full of quiet, earned truth. "He showed up when I didn't think anyone would, and he stayed." Vincent couldn't speak. He didn't even try. He just smiled, nodded once, and let her finish. Afterwards, she pulled him into the hallway, her crown slightly crooked, bare in her backpack, her hand in his. "Was that okay?" she asked. He looked at her. "It was perfect." She studied him. "You're not leaving again, right?" "Never," he said, "unless Bear says I have to." She grinned. "He likes you now, officially." "Then I'm staying." They walked down the hallway slowly, their shadows long behind them, the crown still catching the light. And Vincent knew that this was the most important thing he'd ever done. Not because he had shown up once, but because now he never stopped. A few weeks later, Anna started drawing new pictures, not of the fountain or Bear or even the two of them, though those still showed up now and then, but of moments that hadn't happened yet. A zoo trip, a birthday party with too many balloons, a house with a front porch, and a mailbox labeled Hale and Company and Bear. She pinned them to the wall of her room like they were blueprints, possibilities, things she believed into being with crayons and tape and quiet certainty. One evening, after a dinner of grilled cheese and tomato soup that Anna declared highly sophisticated, she pulled out a folded piece of paper and slid it across the table toward Vincent. "This is Bear's idea," she said. He opened it. It was a form, handwritten, at the top in all capital letters, "Official application to be my forever person." Below it, a list of checkboxes. "Makes good toast. Doesn't forget dance nights, will always show up. Doesn't laugh when I cry, unless I laugh too. Promises to never unchoose me. At the bottom was a line for a signature and a blank space that read, "If yes, please list one reason why you belong in my story." Vincent stared at it for a long time, not because he didn't know what to say, but because he suddenly felt every version of himself that had come before being rewritten by a girl in a plastic crown and a bear with a cape. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a pen. He checked every box. Then under the reason line he wrote, "Because you made me real." Anna grinned. "Bear accepts your terms." That night, as she fell asleep with her crown resting on her nightstand and Bear tucked under one arm, Vincent sat in the hallway outside her room, quiet and still, holding that paper like a sacred document. Emily came out of the kitchen and paused when she saw him. "You okay?" she asked. He nodded. She asked me to be hers." Emily sat beside him. "You already were." He looked at the paper again. "I never thought someone would make me earn it." "She didn't make you earn it," Emily said gently. "She made you see that you already could." Inside the room, Anna stirred in her sleep, her hand resting on Bear's ear, her breathing steady. Vincent leaned back against the wall, feeling the kind of peace that doesn't come from accomplishments or applause, but from the quiet, solid truth of being trusted. And all he could think was, she waited, she hoped, she asked. And because of that, he became something more than he'd ever been. All because she looked up from the edge of a fountain and said, "I thought he'd show up." And now he always would. Winter returned, softer this time, not with the sharp edge of cold absence, but with a kind of quiet warmth. Snow fell in slow spirals outside the windows of Vincent's penthouse, and inside, the space looked nothing like it used to, where there had once been glass and chrome and silence. Now there were piles of books with cracked spines, drawings taped to cabinets, a worn teddy bear with a hero's cape, and a plastic crown displayed like treasure on a shelf beside a family photo taken by a neighbor in the park. Vincent, Anna, Emily, and Bear, smiling like they'd always belonged to each other. The holidays came with no press coverage, no galas, no schedule, just moments, the kind that slipped between hours and stayed forever. Anna wrote a story on Christmas Eve. Curled up on the couch in her pajamas, Bear tucked under one arm, she wrote in her spiral notebook while Vincent read nearby. At some point, she looked up and said, "It's about a girl who waited so long, she forgot what she was waiting for, and then someone sat down next to her and reminded her it was okay to be seen." He put his book down. "How does it end?" She shrugged. She let him stay. He watched her for a moment. "That's a good ending." She returned to her page, her pencil moving again. "No," she said quietly. "That's the beginning." Later that night, after she'd gone to bed and Emily had turned in with a whispered good night, Vincent sat alone in the living room with the lights dimmed, the crown catching the glow of the tree lights. He picked it up, still plastic, still a little scratched, and held it in his hands. The thing that had changed everything. She had worn it for someone who never came, and somehow, by showing up late, he'd arrived right on time. The next morning, Anna bounded into the room in a flurry of laughter and slippered feet, Bear in one hand, the notebook in the other. "Merry Christmas," she whispered, crawling onto the couch beside him. She opened her notebook to the last page. "I finished it." He looked down. There, in careful handwriting, the girl didn't need a castle, and she didn't need a perfect crown. She just needed someone to sit beside her and say, "I'm here." And when someone finally did, she never had to wait again. Vincent put an arm around her. "I love it." She leaned into him, the weight of her soft and easy. "Thanks for being the one who stayed," she said. He didn't respond. He just held her tighter, kissed the top of her head, and looked out at the snow falling beyond the glass. Because once a girl sat at the edge of a fountain holding a crown and said, "I thought he'd show up." And now, she never had to wonder. Again. In January, Anna started leaving notes around the apartment again. She'd done it before, scribbled reminders taped to the fridge, tiny paper hearts hidden in Julian's briefcase, a post-it on the mirror once that said, "Don't forget to smile today. Bear says so." But these new notes were different, shorter, simpler, folded and tucked in unexpected places like breadcrumbs. One taped to Vincent's office chair read, "Even grown-ups need someone who stays." Another, in his coat pocket, "Showing up once is a moment, showing up again is love." And one more wedged between two books on his shelf. "You're not just part of my story anymore, you're the story." He kept every one. One evening he came home late after a meeting that ran too long. The apartment was quiet, the lights low. Emily had already gone to bed. Bear was asleep on the arm of the couch, dramatically draped across a pillow, and Anna's bedroom door was cracked open just enough that he could see her inside, curled beneath her blanket, the glow of her nightlight casting soft shadows across the room. She stirred when he stepped closer. "Hey," she whispered, voice thick with sleep. "You came back?" "I always will." She shifted, reached for Bear, and hugged him tight. "Sometimes I still check," she admitted, "even when I know." Vincent sat on the edge of the bed. "That's okay. You don't have to stop checking." She blinked up at him. "Do you think people ever stop needing proof?" "No," he said, "but I think we get better at believing it sooner." Anna yawned, then mumbled, "You're good at staying." He brushed a strand of hair from her forehead. "I learned from the best." Before she drifted off again, she whispered, "I'm glad it was you." And Vincent, who once believed presents could be outsourced, who thought money solved anything worth solving, who had spent a lifetime surrounded by people who left first and apologized later, sat in the stillness of her room and felt the quiet, permanent truth of what it meant to be chosen, again and again and again. February brought with it the kind of chill that settled into the bones of the city, gray skies, fog on windows, the kind of quiet that made time feel slower. But inside the apartment, warmth bloomed in the smallest ways. Banana bread cooling on the counter, jazz playing softly in the evenings. Vincent and Anna sitting at opposite ends of the same couch, each absorbed in a different book, but occasionally reading lines out loud to each other when something made them laugh. The night before Valentine's Day, Anna stayed up past bedtime, hunched over her notebook with a purple pen and a very serious expression. Bear sat across from her at the table, a tiny stack of construction paper hearts in front of him. When Vincent walked by, she looked up but didn't invite him in. "Secret project," she said. "You'll find out tomorrow." He smiled and kept walking, pretending not to feel honored. The next morning he found a folded card on his coffee mug. The front said, "To Vincent Hale, a.k.a. my not exactly a prince but still showed-up hero." Inside, "Happy Valentine's Day to the person who didn't run, didn't flinch, and didn't miss the most important moment. I know now you weren't supposed to be the one I waited for. You were the one who was supposed to find me instead. Love, Anna and Bear, duh." He read it twice, then a third time, then folded it and tucked it into his wallet beside the only other thing he kept there that mattered. A photo of the fountain from that night, with the blurry outline of Anna in her too big dress and him kneeling beside her, crowned between them like a promise not yet spoken. That evening after dinner, Anna handed him another note, just one line this time, written in pencil on the back of a grocery receipt. Not all happy endings start with finding who you were waiting for. Some start with someone brave enough to stay anyway. She didn't say anything when he read it. She didn't have to. He reached over, held her hand, and squeezed it once. Anna squeezed back, then whispered, "I think I like our ending better." And he whispered back, "Me too." By March it was impossible to deny that something about Vincent had changed, not just to those closest to him, but to everyone. His board noticed first. He started pausing meetings to take calls labeled Anna and Bear. His assistant caught him smiling at his phone during quarterly reviews. He missed one investor dinner entirely because Anna had lost a tooth and insisted that only Vincent the Tooth Fairy adjacent could properly assist with the underpillow ritual. And when people asked, in quiet conversations or over expensive cocktails, what was different, he simply said, "I stopped waiting for the right moment and started showing up for the real ones." Anna called him out one night for working too late. She walked into his office wearing mismatched socks, and Bear zipped into her hoodie like a front-pack baby kangaroo. She didn't say anything at first, just stood there in the doorway until he noticed. "You're late," she said. "For what?" "For now." He blinked, then looked down at his laptop, still open. A spreadsheet, a graph. Something important that didn't feel like it anymore. She walked over, unplugged his charger, and closed the lid. "Come on," she said. "The present misses you." He followed. They curled up on the couch, a blanket over their laps, Bear squeezed between them like always. She didn't ask for anything else. Just leaned against him and whispered, "You didn't miss it. That's the best part." He closed his eyes and let that sink in. Because he knew what it felt like to miss things. First steps, final words, second chances. But this moment, he was here. He'd arrived. He was exactly on time. Spring break arrived in a flurry of ideas from Anna, who had decided it was the perfect time for what she called the stay-at-home adventure of a lifetime. She drafted a full itinerary on rainbow-colored index cards and presented them to Vincent and Emily at breakfast like a press release. Monday was Bear's Historical Museum Day. They converted the hallway into a series of exhibits featuring Bear's many accessories. Tuesday, cooking like we're on TV. Anna wore a chef hat made out of printer paper. Vincent nearly burned the toast. Wednesday, art show prep day. Anna insisted Bear was the guest of honor, with a special section of sketches titled "When He Was Braver Than Me." Through Thursday, stargazing indoors. The ceiling was covered in glow-in-the-dark stickers. Vincent brought a projector that played a galaxy animation across the walls. And Friday? Friday was a surprise. She made them promise not to peek at the Friday card. When the day came, she woke up early, already dressed, hair tied up in a messy ponytail with a glittery scrunchie. Vincent blinked awake to find her standing beside the bed holding Bear and a piece of folded paper. "Today is the anniversary of showing up," she declared. He sat up. "It is?" She nodded. "Not the fountain night, not the school day, just the day I realized I didn't have to look over my shoulder to check if you were still there, because you always are." Vincent's throat tightened, but he kept his voice steady. "What's the plan?" She handed him a note. It was a checklist. Pancakes with too much syrup, dancing in the living room, Bear picks the music. One drawing together, a promise written down, cake because cake. They started with pancakes. The syrup was too much, just as requested. Then they danced. Bear picked a ridiculous song about space dogs, and Vincent twirled Anna until they both collapsed on the couch laughing. The drawing came next. She placed a blank page between them, handed him a marker, and said, "One line at a time. You draw, then I do." Together they drew a house. Not fancy, not perfect, but full. Inside it, stick versions of the three of them, Vincent, Anna, Emily, and Bear, naturally. At the bottom, Anna wrote, "We made this by showing up." Then came the promise. Anna pulled out 2 cards. "Write 1 sentence," she said. "A real one. A promise you keep. I'll write one too." They wrote in silence, then folded the cards and exchanged them. Vincent's read, "I promise to stay close enough for you to always reach me." Anna's said, "I promise to believe you're still here, even when I don't see you." He looked at her. She looked back. And for the longest time, neither of them said anything. They didn't need to. The cake was lopsided, the frosting uneven. But it didn't matter. They cut it together and ate it, sitting on the kitchen floor. The surprise of the day wasn't an activity. It wasn't a trip or a gift. It was the realization that the greatest thing either of them had ever done was stay. The next week, Anna brought home an assignment from school. A simple one. Write about a moment that changed your life. "It's for real," she told Vincent, dropping her backpack by the door. We're not allowed to make it up, and it has to be a real moment, not like when I learned how to tie my shoes." She paused. "I never really learned that anyway. Loops are complicated." Vincent smiled. "What are you going to write about?" "I don't know yet," she said, but he could tell she already did. For the next few days she wrote in bursts, always in the same notebook, always at the kitchen table, Bear nearby like he was editing. She'd tear out pages, start again, ask for new pencils, refuse help. It wasn't just an assignment. It was something else, something deeper. On Thursday night she handed it to him. "I think it's done," she said, then added, "but I want you to read it first." He sat down slowly and unfolded the paper. The title was written at the top in block letters, "The Moment I Stopped Waiting." He looked at her. She nodded, so he read. It wasn't a big moment, no fireworks, no music. It didn't feel magical. But it was everything. I was wearing a dress that didn't really fit, holding a crown that didn't really matter, sitting beside a fountain I'd never seen before. And I was waiting, like always, for someone who said maybe, for someone who didn't come. But then someone else did. He didn't say much at first, just sat beside me. I didn't know him, but I didn't feel alone. That was the moment everything changed. Not when I got adopted. Not when the paperwork said forever. Not when I started calling him Dad. It was when someone sat down beside me and didn't leave. That's when I stopped waiting. Vincent's eyes blurred before he reached the end. He looked up. Anna was watching him, still and quiet. "Is it okay?" she asked. "It's perfect." She nodded, satisfied. "Then I'll turn it in." That night, after she went to bed, Vincent made a copy, then another, one for his desk, one for the inside of his wallet, and one he folded small and kept in his coat pocket, where he could touch it on days when he felt the weight of the world pressing in, because it reminded him of the truth. He hadn't saved her by showing up. She'd saved him by letting him stay. The day after Anna turned in her assignment, Vincent found himself standing at the window in his office. Not the penthouse window where the city stretched quiet and familiar, but the one in the corner of the boardroom, where everything below moved like it was in fast forward. The people, the cars, the towering skyline, sharp lines, unfeeling edges, the world he used to belong to, before a girl in a too-big dress and a plastic crown taught him how to stop running towards everything that didn't matter. He stood there with her words in his pocket, that folded-up copy of The Moment I Stopped Waiting warming against his palm through the fabric. It was such a small thing, a single page, a few paragraphs in a child's handwriting. But it had dismantled something in him that no press release or acquisition ever could. He could still hear her voice in his head, clear as glass. It wasn't a big moment. No fireworks, no music. It didn't feel magical, but it was everything. He thought about all the things that had felt magical before. Helicopter landings on rooftops, black tie events in Monaco, applause when he walked into a room, headlines that called him a genius. None of them had ever felt like this. He called a meeting with his executive team that afternoon, not to announce a merger or a new product launch, but to tell them he was changing his hours, that he wouldn't be taking meetings past 4 p.m., that he'd be stepping back from press engagements, that if they had a problem with it, they were welcome to schedule a conversation with his assistant next week, sometime after his daughter's science fair. There were a few glances exchanged around the table, a pause, and then someone said, "Is everything okay?" And Vincent smiled. "Everything," he said, "has never been better." He left early that day, picked Anna up from school himself. She didn't know he was coming. When she walked out of the building and saw him standing there beneath the awning, his coat dusted with a few stray flower petals from the tree above, her face split into a grin so big he felt it in his ribs. "You're early," she said, bounding over. "Did something get canceled?" "Nope." "Are you working from the car?" "Nope." "Did you get fired?" He laughed. "Not yet." "So, you're just here?" "I'm just here." Anna looked at him, suspicious. "You're becoming dangerously reliable, you know." "Good," he said, opening the car door for her. "I'm aiming for unshakable." That night, as they sat on the balcony watching the sky turn dusky blue, Anna handed him her sketchbook. "I started a new series," she said. "It's about moments, not big ones, just the kind that change you." He opened to the first page, a drawing of the fountain, the crown, him sitting beside her. Page 2, Bear sitting between them. Page 3, Vincent holding her hand as she stepped onto a school stage. Page 4, the three of them, Anna, Emily, and him, wrapped in a blanket on the couch. Movie paused, popcorn in a bowl, one of Bear's paws poking out from under the blanket like he was asleep. "They're not fancy," she said, "but they're true." He flipped back to page 1. "These are everything." Anna leaned against his shoulder. "I think if I draw them, I won't forget." He nodded. "And when you do forget, I'll still be here to remember." She was quiet a long time, then whispered, "I used to think the people who stayed were like stars, far away, too far to touch. Now I think they're more like chairs." "Chairs?" "Yeah, the kind that are always in the room even when you're not thinking about them, just there, ready when you need them." Vincent smiled. "That might be the highest compliment I've ever received." She grinned up at him. "You're welcome." He kissed the top of her head, slow and certain, and pulled the blanket tighter around both of them. They stayed like that for a long time. The stars came out. The city moved quietly beneath them. And somewhere inside that stillness, he realized this was what legacy really looked like. Not buildings, not bank accounts, but the way a child could lean into your shoulder and call you home. April arrived like a breath held too long. Suddenly everything felt brighter. The wind warmed. The trees bloomed in soft green and white along the sidewalks, like the world was brushing off its heavy coat. Anna insisted that Bear needed his own spring wardrobe, so they spent a Saturday afternoon sewing a miniature vest from a piece of Vincent's old tie. She gave it lapels. "Every serious bear needs lapels," she said, with the quiet gravity of someone who knew to things. That same weekend, Anna asked if they could go back to the hotel. Vincent froze. "The one with the fountain," she said. "I want to see it again, just for a second." He didn't ask why. He just nodded and told her to wear her crown if she felt like it. She did. They arrived late in the day. The sun was low, slanting through the garden courtyard in long ribbons. The ballroom was closed. The crowd was gone. But the fountain was still there, stone and soft and familiar, like a friend who had kept the secret of their beginning. Anna walked ahead, her plastic crown catching the light. She sat on the edge of the fountain, just like before. But this time, she didn't wait. She looked back at Vincent. "Will you sit with me again?" He walked over slowly, sat beside her. No hesitation. "Does it look the same to you?" she asked. He studied the curve of the fountain's basin, the place where she'd once turned the crown in her hands. "No," he said, "it looks better." "Because I'm not waiting anymore?" "Because you never should have had to." Anna was quiet for a long time. Then she reached into her backpack and pulled out a folded piece of paper. "I made this," she said, "a permission slip." Vincent raised an eyebrow. "For what?" "For forever." He opened it slowly. It said, "This certifies that Vincent Hale is allowed to stay, even when it's hard, even when it's scary, even if I grow up and forget to say thank you, even if I don't wear the crown anymore, because he showed up when I didn't think anyone would, and that matters more than everything else." Below it, 2 boxes. "I agree. I really agree." Vincent took out a pen from his pocket and checked both. "I'll frame it on a," he said, voice thick. "No," Anna replied. "Keep it in your wallet, like insurance, in case you ever forget." He nodded. They sat a while longer. The sun dipped low. The air smelled like lilacs and rain. Anna looked at him sideways. "I think this fountain remembers." "Remembers what?" "That once 2 strangers sat here, and one of them asked a question that changed the rest of their lives." Vincent didn't answer. He didn't have to. Because once a girl sat with a plastic crown in her lap and whispered, "I thought he'd show up." And now she didn't have to wonder anymore, because he always would. In late April, Anna surprised Vincent with another request. Not for a party or a trip or something material, though she'd once put adopt a small dragon on her wish list, but something simpler, deeper. She wanted to tell her story. Not a drawing, she clarified, not a poem, a talk like a real one, in front of people. Vincent had been stirring sugar into his coffee when she said it. He stopped mid-stir. "A talk," he repeated. She nodded. "At the library. They're doing a Voices of the City night, and I asked if I could speak." He watched her, noting the way her hands fidgeted in her lap, how Bear sat upright beside her like he'd been a part of the planning committee. "And you want to tell our story?" "No," she said. "I want to tell mine, but yeah, you're in it." Vincent set down his spoon. "Okay," he said. "Then I'll be in the front row." The night of the reading came fast. The library's community room wasn't big. 40 chairs, a simple podium, soft yellow lighting. But to Anna, it may as well have been a concert hall. She wore her crown, not the old one, a new one, still plastic, still sparkly. But this one she'd picked out herself, with a gift card Emily had tucked into her backpack one morning with a note that read, "Own the story." Vincent wore a button-up shirt Anna had chosen. It had tiny polka dots. "You look more approachable," she said, "less like a CEO, more like a human." He took it as a compliment. When it was her turn, she stepped up to the mic with Bear in one hand and her speech, carefully printed on 3 pages of lined notebook paper, in the other. She looked so small up there. But when she began to speak, her voice was clear, confident, the kind of confidence that doesn't come from being loud, but from knowing your truth is stronger than your fear. "Hi," she began. "My name is Anna, this is Bear, and this is my story." She told it in pieces, not as a straight line, but as a mosaic, about the night by the fountain, about waiting, about being seen, about the difference between being rescued and being chosen. She spoke about Vincent without naming him, saying only, "Someone sat next to me once and didn't try to fix me. He just stayed." And she ended like this. "I used to think real life was something that happened around other people, that I was just a side character. But then someone said yes, and then kept saying it. And that's when I knew I was the story all along." The applause was quiet, then steady, then full. Vincent stood. He clapped the loudest. Later, as they walked home through the cool night air, Anna looked up at him and said, "Do you think my story helped someone?" "I think it reminded someone they matter," he said. She grinned. "That's enough." They reached the apartment. Bear was asleep in her arms, her crown tilted sideways. But her steps were light, like someone who knew the story was still being written, and she was the one holding the pen. The following weekend, Anna found Vincent in the kitchen early in the morning, still in his sleep shirt, flipping pancakes that were a little too thick but made with more heart than skill. She stood in the doorway for a minute watching. Bear was draped over her shoulder like a scarf. Her crown, now clearly her thinking crown, was already in place. "Can I ask something?" she said, her voice quiet, still crusted with sleep. "Always." She walked over, leaned against the counter, and watched the pancakes sizzle. "If I had never said anything, at the fountain, I mean, do you think we still would have found each other?" He paused. He looked at her, the way she stood with her arms folded, already ready to protect herself if he didn't have the right answer. "I don't know," he said honestly, "but I think I would have stayed lost a lot longer." Anna nodded. "Sometimes I wonder how close we came to missing it, like 10 seconds, 20. What if you hadn't stopped?" "But I did." She smiled. "I know, but it makes me think about how one tiny thing can change everything." He flipped the pancake, then looked over. "You think you would have asked someone else?" "No," she said. "I was tired of asking. That's what made me say it out loud. I thought maybe saying it into the world would hurt less than keeping it in." She reached into her pajama pocket and pulled out another folded piece of paper. "I was going to give you this that night, if you said no." He dried his hands and took it from her, unfolded it slowly. It was a drawing of her, alone on the fountain ledge, the crown beside her on the ground and Bear in her lap. Above it, written in small letters, "It's okay. I'll try again someday." Vincent looked at her. "You carried both outcomes with you." She nodded. "I always did." He set the drawing down gently. "Do you still feel like you need to carry that one?" "No," she said, "not anymore, but I kept it to remind myself I had hope even then." He wrapped an arm around her shoulders, pulled her close, and whispered, "You never had to be the one doing all the hoping." "I know," she said, "now." They stood like that for a long moment, her tucked against him, the smell of burnt pancake in the air, Bear smushed between them. Then Anna pulled back and pointed at the pan. "You should flip that before it becomes a life lesson." He laughed, turned back to the stove, and said, "Too late." Later that day, Anna pinned the old drawing on the wall beside the new ones, right between "the day I spoke" and "the night I stopped asking." She labeled it simply, "Almost." Because even though she didn't live in that moment anymore, she knew it mattered. And so did he, because she'd spoken into the silence. And he had answered. In May, Anna started preparing for her school's end-of-year open house. It wasn't a big deal to most kids, just a night where parents wandered around classrooms, looked at glued-together dioramas and watercolored planets. But to Anna, it was monumental. "This is the first one where I have someone coming just for me," she said, as she organized her desk for the fourth time that afternoon. "Not just someone who's there, but someone who sees it all." Vincent didn't say much in that moment, just watched, as she arranged her work like it was a treasure, like it deserved to be noticed. When the night finally came, the hallway buzzed with families and chatter. The air smelled like crayons, copy paper, and those sweet store-bought cookies wrapped in cling film. Anna wore a blue dress and her crown again, not for show but for memory. Vincent walked beside her desk slowly, careful not to miss a thing. Each item came with a story, a reason, a moment behind the moment. "This," she said, pointing to a story she'd written, "is about a girl who didn't know what to ask for. So she asked for someone, and the someone came." "This one's math," she said, waving a hand over a lopsided bar graph. "I still hate math. But I tried." "This," she said, pulling open a drawer and revealing a secret note taped inside, "is where I keep the reminder." It read, "You are not too much. You were just waiting for someone strong enough to hold the whole story." Vincent knelt beside her. "Did you write that?" "I had to," she said, "until it stuck." He looked around the room, saw the way her classmates talked with their grown-ups, the way teachers smiled at Anna like they knew. Not everything, but enough. Then he looked back at her. "You know," he said, "you were never too much, not even close. You were exactly the right amount." Anna gave a tiny smile. "Bear says that's the best compliment you've ever given." He laughed. "He's not wrong." When the classroom began to empty, Anna sat at her desk and looked around like she was memorizing everything. The smell, the warmth, the fact that she wasn't alone. "I used to pretend stuff like this," she said. "I used to imagine someone walking in who would actually want to stay, someone who didn't think I was a side project or an obligation." Vincent leaned against the edge of the desk. Did the real thing feel the same? She looked at him. No, it felt better. They left the classroom slowly. Anna clutched Bear in one arm and a drawing she hadn't shown anyone in the other. When they stepped into the cool evening air, she handed it to him. The picture showed the two of them in a hallway surrounded by stars, her in the crown, him in his polka-dotted shirt, Bear flying in the background with a cape. At the top, in her careful, quiet handwriting, she'd written, "I waited. He came. Then he stayed." That's where the story is, not the moment he showed up. The 1,000 moments he didn't leave. Vincent looked at her, unable to speak. So she reached up, placed the crown on his head and said, "For services to showing up." He knelt down, hugged her close, and for a long time they just stayed there. No rush, no ceremony, just the sacred stillness of what they'd built together. Because once she thought he might not come, and now she didn't need to wonder. June arrived with the scent of sun-warmed pavement and the sound of sprinklers ticking in every front yard on their walk to school. Anna started counting down the days to summer break. not with impatience but with intention. "Every day feels like a page," she told Vincent one morning, as they ate toast on the balcony, "and I want to make sure I write the ending right." Vincent didn't ask what that meant. He didn't need to. He'd learned by now that when Anna said write, she didn't just mean stories. She meant presence, moments, memory. She was already building something invisible and permanent, and he was lucky enough to be written into it. On the last day of school, Anna asked if she could walk home alone, not because she wanted to distance, but because she wanted to arrive on her own terms. "Just for today," she said, "so I can feel what it means to come home and know someone's actually there." Vincent didn't argue. He just stood at the window when the clock struck 3, watching the sidewalk like it was a stage. When she appeared, backpack bouncing, sneakers bright against the concrete, bear's ears poking out of the zipper, he smiled before she even looked up. She saw him in the window and raised her hand in a salute. He met her at the door. Inside, she dropped her bag, kicked off her shoes, and flopped onto the couch with all the dramatic flair of a Broadway actress finishing a monologue. "Third grade," she declared, "complete." Vincent sat beside her, offering a juice box like a peace offering. She sipped it once, then pulled a note from her pocket. "This is for you," she said. "It's my report card, but not the one the school gave me." He unfolded the paper. Across the top, Anna's emotional report card for Dad and Bear. Categories included rescue reflex A, ability to stay when things get hard, A+, listening without trying to fix, A, cupcake distribution during tough days, A++, and showing up even when uncertain, A++++. At the bottom, in tiny letters, final grade, the best kind of always. Vincent cleared his throat, blinking hard. "I didn't take tests for this," he joked. "You didn't have to," she said. "You lived it." That evening, as the city cooled and the sun painted golden streaks across the kitchen floor, Anna stood in front of the family photo wall, now filled with snapshots of small, perfect things. She added one more, a Polaroid of her, crown tilted, standing on tiptoes to kiss Vincent's cheek. Bear photobombing in the corner. She stepped back and studied the wall. "This," she said, "is how you write a good ending." He looked at her. "You think we're at the end?" She shook her head. "No, but we're definitely at the part where people finally believe it's real." Vincent crossed the room, knelt down, and hugged her with everything he had. The kind of hug that spoke fluently in, I'm here, I'm still here." And in the quiet that followed, with Bear tucked between them and the crown resting on the arm of the couch, Vincent understood something simple and stunning. She hadn't just invited him into her story. She'd let him become a chapter she could trust. Summer bloomed loud and unapologetic. Heat shimmered on the sidewalks. Kids ran through sprinklers in the park, and Anna declared the start of what she called the season of small forever things. She wrote it on the whiteboard in the kitchen, underlined it 3 times, and added a doodle of Bear lounging under a beach umbrella. "We're not doing big plans," she said. "No flights, no schedules, just things that feel like forever, even if they're only 15 minutes long." Vincent didn't question it. He just started keeping a notebook in his back pocket to jot down every moment she pointed to. July 2nd, picnic in the hallway. Bear fell asleep with a carrot. July 8th, Anna taught me how to braid hair. I was terrible. She let me keep trying. July 15th, we walked in silence for 10 blocks. It was the best conversation we've ever had. July 19th, she said, "I used to think love had to knock. Now I think sometimes it waits outside until you open the window." Some moments were silly. Some were so honest he had to write them down just to make sure he'd never forget. One night in late July, Anna came out of her room holding a shoebox. "I've been saving this," she said. "It's my forever things box." She opened it on the living room rug, barefoot, her pajamas too big and Bear clutched under one arm like always. Inside the box, her first crown, the wrapper from the first lollipop he'd brought her from a business trip, a smooth pebble from the park bench where they'd once sat after a tough day, a list of every question she used to be too scared to ask, but now carried with check marks beside them. "Do you want to add something?" she asked, nudging the box toward him. Vincent looked around. Then he reached into his wallet and pulled out the permission slip she'd given him months ago. The one with 2 checkboxes. "I agree. I really agree." He added it to the box without folding it. Anna looked down, then back up at him. "You know what I realized?" "What?" "I don't remember the moment I stopped being afraid you'd leave." Vincent's chest ached in the best way. "I'm glad," he said. "Maybe it wasn't a moment. Maybe it was 100. Maybe it was you handing me juice in the car when I was too mad to speak. Maybe it was you calling me Dad for the first time. Or," she said, "maybe it was you coming back every single time." They sat in silence again. No rush, just time. Then Anna placed the lid back on the box, slid it under the couch, and whispered, "If Bear ever forgets, that's where we keep the proof." That night, before bed, she handed him one last card, just a sticky note with 5 words written in purple ink. "You didn't save me. You stayed." Vincent didn't frame that one. He kept it loose, tucked into the back of his phone case, because every time he touched it, he remembered where everything began, with a girl, a crown, a quiet voice beside a fountain, and a sentence that had once held all the weight in the world. "I thought he'd show up." And now he had. He always would. August arrived with that soft golden light that made everything feel slower, more fragile, more real. The mornings were quieter. Anna woke later. The days stretched long, filled with sidewalk chalk that melted in the heat, stories read on the floor with popsicles, and long conversations about everything and nothing. Vincent had never known time could feel like this. It didn't press in on him. It unfolded. On the first Sunday of the month, Anna asked for something unexpected. "Can we go back to the hotel?" Vincent looked up from his coffee. "The one with the fountain?" She nodded. "I want to see it again, but not to wait, just to remember." They arrived just before sunset. The city had cooled just enough to breathe again. The fountain stood where it always had, unmoving, unchanged. But now it felt different. It wasn't a symbol of ache anymore. It was a marker, a memory sealed in place. Anna sat on the ledge, this time swinging her legs, no crown, no dress, just her, in a t-shirt that read, "I'm the main character," and sneakers that had been colored on with markers. Bear was tucked under one arm, slightly more worn, but still brave-looking. Vincent sat beside her. No ceremony, no preamble, just the two of them side by side. She pulled something from her bag, a notebook, worn at the edges. She opened it to the middle and passed it to him. It was a list. Things that have changed since you sat down that day. I laugh more, out loud, like I mean it. I don't keep extra shoes under my bed just in case. I ask questions even when they feel too big. I sleep all the way through the night sometimes. Bear smiles more. This is a metaphor. I believe when someone says they're staying. At the bottom, in her small, careful handwriting. That was the moment the waiting ended. The sitting began. The staying grew. Vincent ran his fingers over the page like it might disappear. She looked at him. "Do you ever wish we'd met differently?" He considered the question. "No," he said. "I think we met the only way we could." "Why?" "Because if I had walked up to you any other day, in any other place, I might have seen a kid with a crown and thought nothing of it. But that day, I saw you, and I knew." Anna nodded. "I think maybe that day I was finally loud enough, even though I didn't shout." "You didn't have to." They stayed there until the sky turned the color of cooling tea. People passed. Lights flicked on behind hotel windows. Someone laughed far away. But the space around the fountain stayed quiet. Anna reached into her bag one more time and pulled out something wrapped in tissue paper. She handed it to him with no explanation. Vincent unwrapped it slowly. It was the original crown, the first one, the plastic one, the one she'd worn that night. "I want you to have it," she said. "Not to wear, just to keep. So you don't forget who said yes." He didn't speak, just placed it gently in his lap. Then, after a moment, he said, "Can I tell you something?" She tilted her head. I didn't just stay for you, I stayed for me, too. Anna smiled, wide and sure. I know, that's why it worked. They walked home in the dark, Bear between them, the crown wrapped in his coat, and not once, did Anna look over her shoulder to check if he was still there. Because she knew he always would be. School was just a week away when Anna came into the living room holding a small white envelope with her name on it. Out, she held it like it was made of glass. It's from my teacher, she said, passing it to Vincent. It's a welcome back letter, but there's something else in it. Vincent opened it slowly. Inside was a standard form, a note from the teacher, and a sheet titled Family Tree Project, due September 10th. He looked at Anna. She was sitting on the edge of the couch, Bear perched beside her, hands folded. She didn't look scared, but she didn't look relaxed either. Want to talk about it? He asked. I don't know where to start, she said. I don't have a tree. I have moments, names, half-branches, gaps. Vincent came over and sat beside her. You don't have to make it like everyone else's. She looked down. But what if it has to be neat? What if it has to be true instead? Anna was quiet for a long time. That night, after dinner, she pulled out a giant piece of poster board and set it in the middle of the living room floor. Okay, she said, but I'm not drawing a tree. What are you drawing? A river? Vincent blinked. That's different. She grinned. Exactly. At the top she wrote, Me. From there she drew lines that curved and twisted. Some stopped abruptly. Some joined others. Some split again. She added names, not just relatives, but people who had made an impact. Her old neighbor who gave her cookies on Tuesdays, the woman at the shelter who gave her socks and a book, Emily, Bear, Vincent, even a teacher from her first school whose name she couldn't quite spell, but remembered as the one who didn't yell when I cried. Each person was a tributary, a stream feeding into her. When she got to Vincent's name, she paused. Then, very carefully, she drew a line that wrapped around the entire river like an arm. Under it she wrote, The one who stayed and gave it shape. Vincent knelt beside her. That's me. She nodded. You didn't start the river, but you helped it keep flowing. He couldn't speak. He just nodded, knelt there beside her. As she added one final piece, a crown drawn in gold marker, at the bottom corner, floating in the water. Why the crown? He asked, voice low. To remind me how I found my voice, she said, and how someone heard it. She submitted the project just like that. No revisions, no edits. A week later, her teacher wrote a note back. Your story is not like everyone else's. That's what makes it powerful. Vincent tucked that note into a folder with her drawings and her letters. He added it to the quiet archive of everything that proved how far she'd come. Because Anna hadn't built a tree with even branches and perfect balance. She had built something better, a river. One that had kept moving, one that had found its strength through all the turns. And now it carried him, too. 2 nights before school started, Anna couldn't sleep. She came into the living room wrapped in a blanket, Bear dangling from her hand, the tip of one slipper dragging behind her. Vincent was still up, reading something he wasn't really focused on, and when he looked up and saw her, he set it aside without hesitation. I have the jitters, she said. Is it because of the new classroom? She shook her head. The new teacher? Another shake. Something with your friends? No, she said, then paused. It's because I'm not scared anymore, and that feels weird. Vincent didn't laugh or minimize it. He just patted the couch beside him. She climbed up, curled into his side, and let the quiet hold them both. I used to fall asleep with one eye open, she said. Not literally, but you know what I mean. He nodded. I do. I'd listen for footsteps or for silence that lasted too long, or for someone coming and going. I remember. And now, she trailed off. Now I just fall asleep. That's how it should be. But it makes the part before feel more real somehow. Like now that I'm safe, I can feel how unsafe it was. Vincent brushed her hair gently from her forehead. That's not weird. That's healing. She looked up at him. You ever feel that? "All the time," he said. "When I see you just being you, it shows me how much I missed before I knew how to stay." She didn't say anything for a while, and then, "Bear thinks maybe we should make a new bedtime routine, just for the school year, something to remind me every night that we're still here." "I think that's a brilliant idea." Together they wrote it out. Anna's official nightly reminder: brushed teeth equals sign proof of discipline. Pajamas equals sign soft armor. Bear equals sign co-captain of the night. Dad hug equals sign grounding wire. One true sentence spoken before lights out. "What's a true sentence?" she asked. "Anything that's real, even if it's small." That night, after brushing teeth, after Bear was properly fluffed, and pajamas were declared adequately cozy, Vincent tucked her in and turned off the light. Then, in the dark, she whispered, "My true sentence is, I believe I'm the main story now." Vincent's chest went tight. "Mine is, I will always read every page, even the boring ones, especially those." She smiled, invisible in the dark but warm in the silence. The next morning she woke with no jitters, no fear, just her backpack, Bear zipped safely inside, and her crown not on her head but tucked in the side pocket. "Just in case someone else needs it," she said. And Vincent watched her walk out the door into the first day of school, not like someone being pushed into the world, but like someone leading it. September unfolded in quiet, golden layers. Anna settled into school with a kind of confidence that didn't shout. It just showed up. Every day, steady, every morning, Bear in her backpack, and the crown still tucked safely in the side pocket, untouched, but never forgotten. Her teacher called her an anchor, and when Vincent heard that, something in his chest tightened in the best way. "She helps the other kids settle," the teacher said. "There's something grounded about her." Vincent smiled, but he knew the truth. Anna wasn't just grounded, she'd become the ground beneath people's feet. One Friday evening, after dinner and dishwashing and a pillow fight that left the couch cushions in exile, Anna curled up on the floor with her notebook. Vincent sat nearby, pretending to read a newspaper but really watching her the way you do when you're witnessing someone becoming something important in real time. She looked up suddenly. "Do you want to know what I wrote today?" He folded the paper. "Of course." She scooted over, flipping to a page she'd dog-eared. At the top, "What it means to be chosen." Beneath it, a list, not just items, but small, careful sentences. It's not being picked first. It's being picked on purpose. It's not being rescued. It's being met where you are. It's when someone hears your quietest voice and doesn't flinch. It's when someone brings snacks without asking. It's knowing you don't have to earn love every day. It's someone remembering your fears without making you repeat them. It's Bear, obviously. It's the person who stays when nothing big is happening. It's the one who looks at your mess and says, "We'll figure it out." It's sitting at a fountain next to someone who didn't walk away. Vincent read the list slowly, reverently, like it was something sacred. Then he looked at her. "You should publish this," she snorted. "Maybe I'll write a book, How to Stay, a Guide for Grown-Ups Who Forgot." He laughed. "I'd buy 10 copies. She flipped to the back of the notebook and held up a page with 2 names written in block letters, Anna and Bear. Underneath, she'd added smaller, and Vincent, the one who didn't leave. He didn't know what to say, so he said the only thing that felt honest. "Thank you for choosing me." Anna smiled. "I didn't choose you." He blinked. "No?" "You sat down," she said. "That's different." "What's the difference?" "Choosing someone is about what you want. Sitting down is about what you do." She looked at him, serious now. "You did both." He nodded slowly. "So did you." She stood up, stretched, and walked down the hall toward her room. "Add that to your list," she called over her shoulder. "Bear says you're doing great." Vincent sat there for a long time after she disappeared down the hall, the notebook open, the words still echoing. "It's not being rescued, it's being met where you are." He reached for a pen, and in his own handwriting on the last page of her notebook he wrote, "And it's you. You are what it means."